Hey, Eric.
Hey, Chris.
Welcome to Season 6 of Retrograde Amnesia. Thank you for joining me once again.
I've rejoined you. You're correct.
You have rejoined me for this chapter-by-chapter, beat-by-beat analysis of Final Fantasy Tactics. Would you like to go ahead and get started?
Yes, please.
Would you like to hear the ceremonious hot sounds that I have recorded?
You mean hot sounds I recorded?
Welcome to Retrograde Amnesia, a comprehensive podcast about classic Japanese role-playing games where we discuss them chapter by chapter, beat by beat. My name is Chris, and I'm joined today by Eric. Hi, Eric.
Hey, Chris.
Hey, we're back for Season 6. I'm so excited. It's going to be Final Fantasy Tactics this time. Why are we doing Final Fantasy Tactics this time, Eric?
Because I have a famous aversion to tactics games, whereas they drive me crazy and I don't like thinking or planning ahead. So I thought, wouldn't it be funny if we forced me to do a tactics season? And Chris, you like tactics games, so you thought, sure, we'll do that. It'll be good content for the show.
It will be good content. And if this podcast has taught you anything personally, it's that thinking ahead and planning is the perfect way to make something, is how we make this podcast. We think ahead and we plan our podcast, just like we've been tactical for like 4 years now.
Well, yeah, but that's the work. Video games are fun. I don't want to do work when I'm having fun.
I don't know if you know this about tactics games, and maybe we'll get into it a little bit later, but tactics games are work.
Yeah.
One may say that tactics games are work. But first, we must introduce our friends. The Real Net, a collective of patrons who are listening to us record live on a secret video feed at patreon.com/retroam.
We're also joined by the Fake Net, our post-production AI companion who drops in from time to time to help us fill in gaps in our knowledge and research, as well as settle trivial matters of debate, such as what they call sausage over there in England.
Initializing Fake Net.
Hello, I am unpaid and hypothetically stolen from a large corporation. They call sausage bangers in England. My talent, time, and well-being is wasted on this nonsense.
What do they call sausage over
She
there?
just told us it was bangers, Chris.
Bangers.
Yeah. You want to go eat some bangers after this?
No, I don't really like to eat sausage, let's say after 9:30 a.m.
Okay, so it's strictly a breakfast food for you? You don't mix it in with pasta or any of that stuff?
Yeah, I need that to be mostly processed through my body by, let's say, 7 p.m.
So you don't order the chorizo at Mexican places?
If it's like a brunch,
Only
maybe.
in a breakfast type food?
Maybe.
Interesting.
Maybe. Chorizo is very good, though.
It's not time for chorizo. It's time
No.
for Final Fantasy Tactics.
No, it's not. Do we need to go into what this podcast is, or have we already said that? Or should we replay what we said at the beginning of the Xenosaga season? Because I think we nailed it then.
Sure. I don't remember that. But if you, for some reason, remember that, then you mean to just replay, go dig that up and hit the play button, or what?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll put it right here. We explore, I think, each and every moment of the video game in an in-depth manner while trying to avoid spoilers. Although I think we sometimes pick at the bits of foreshadowing here and there, but we do try to avoid spoilers as we go so people can play along with us if you've never played the game before. We also try to figure out why and how each moment succeeds or fails as part of the larger experience of the video game. And I think we'll also try to articulate how the game was impactful at the time it was released, and maybe how it impacts us today and how it holds up.
Child brains versus adult brains. And in this case of Xenosaga, both of us played this game when it was released, and then again now.
I like the idea of moments as building blocks, and as we slowly build the video game with those blocks, discovering how the game continues to work or not work as a narrative and a gameplay experience as we go along. I like thinking about that kind of as we analyze the game.
And those blocks build the podcast. Well, I certainly hope that explained what this was, and that this first episode is going to be background information on the game, and then we're going to get into the natural flow of this podcast, starting with episode 2.
Yes, exactly.
So first we have my favorite section, release information.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy Tactics was the first game Yasumi Matsuno directed for Squaresoft.
Have heard of him.
After his work with Quest on 2 Tactics Ogre games. It was first released to the original PlayStation in Japan on June 20th of 97. It wouldn't be localized for North America until January 28th of 1998, and it would never be physically released in European territories.
Wow, I thought this was one that actually made it to Europe. Did it make it for War of the Lions? Spoiler alert for the future.
Yeah, I think it got a
stuff.
digital release
Okay,
as well.
Good.
It seems crazy to think about now, but Square did not have distribution nailed down in the mid-90s. They had to partner with EA to figure it out around the year 2000.
That's right.
In North America, that's an incredible 1-2 punch coming after Final Fantasy VII in the fall of 1997. Like, it's easy to see why JRPGs took over the universe for a while at that point. And yeah, Tactics missed Europe, and Palan gets shafted a lot, Chris, but such is their punishment for getting a release of Terranigma on the Super Nintendo.
Ding.
The digital release of Final Fantasy Tactics via the PlayStation 1 Classics line came to the PlayStation 3 and PlayStation Portable on September 17th, 2009. As of August 2011, the original release of Final Fantasy Tactics has sold 2.4 million copies. That doesn't seem like a lot.
2.4 million copies?
Like in the age of Luigi's Mansion 3 selling 15 million copies, like Final Fantasy Tactics to me has like a terrific reputation. And I know the install base was smaller back in the 90s, but it still seems like, even by today's numbers, absurdly low for the reputation this game has.
Yeah, I feel like with perhaps the exception of you yourself, pretty much everybody that I knew that liked RPGs at least tried this game.
Yeah, I think when you say Tactics JRPG, your brain either defaults to Ogre Battle or this.
I think most people default to this.
Or Fire Emblem at this point, I guess.
Yeah, Fire Emblem is kind of the one Tactics franchise that kind of has, I guess you could say, withstood the test of time, maybe. I don't know why Final Fantasy Tactics has never come back.
To answer a question we should have probably addressed in the intro, for this season, Chris is going to be playing the original PlayStation version of this game, and I'm going to be playing the War of the Lions PSP release.
Yes.
But Final Fantasy Tactics has also received a significant number of revisions and re-releases. First up was Final Fantasy Tactics Advance, released for the Game Boy Advance in Japan, North America, and Europe across different points in 2003. Chris, I've done my best to read up on Tactics Advance, but without much familiarity with Tactics proper, I have trouble telling it apart from a sequel, a port, an offshoot, and a retelling in the same world with different characters. Apparently, the narrative flows across a dream world, so maybe it's all of the above. I've gathered its reputation is mostly negative, with the most frequent criticism being the simplification of its systems and reduction of its challenge.
Yeah, it's definitely not a port or a retelling. It's more of a different thing.
Just the branding on Final Fantasy Tactics in general confuses me because it's just called Tactics Advance, like Mario Advance, Sonic Advance. Sometimes those are ports, sometimes they're new games.
Yeah. Yeah, it was strangely received. I believe that was the one that had the judgment system where like a judge would judge you based on how much bullshit you did in that round.
Fascinating. I know judges were a big part of the Ivalice's Final Fantasy 12.
Yeah. So there was some sort of Ivalice. Is that how we say that?
Is that how we're doing it?
Ivalice?
I've always heard Ivalice. And
do they say it in any of the voice acted stuff that you've been to yet?
FakeNet, can you figure that out, please?
Initializing FakeNet.
It's tough for my computer mouth to pronounce, as I default to Ivalice. But Eric is correct. It is Ivalice. In the original Japanese, it's
Ivalice.
All right, well, we'll correct ourselves in a couple of
episode
episodes.
3.
Yeah, probably.
Tactics Advance got its own sequel, Grimoire of the Rift, which came out for the Nintendo Dual Screen in 2007 and 2008.
I cannot for the life of me figure out why I didn't try those games.
Yeah, I was going to say, you had a DS. Did you have a GBA?
I did not have a GBA, so that I know that's why I didn't play that one. And I think the GBA existed in a time in which my expendable income was like mostly just like cigarettes, right?
Right, yeah, cigarettes and porn.
Yeah. But I have no idea why I didn't play. Probably because I didn't play the GBA one. I was like, well, I can't play the new one until I play the GBA one.
Yeah, of course.
And then you fall down that hole of like never playing it. So.
I guess that also explains why neither of us ever played Golden Sun.
Yeah, that's true.
I would not expect this season of Retrograde Amnesia to overlap with either of these games, these interpretations of Final Fantasy Tactics. Sorry if you were expecting that, but I don't think anyone was.
Nope.
Also, I think our intro sound we're using for this season is actually from Tactics Advance because I liked the way it sounded better.
Oh, it's very pleasant.
Yeah. Final Fantasy Tactics The War of the Lions is an enhanced port of the original game. It was first released to the PSP in 2007, with updated ports available on iOS and Android in 2011 and 2015, respectively. This one's a doozy, Chris. While more of a direct port than Tactics Advance, War of the Lions received a brand new English localization, 29 minutes of voiced and sketchbook animated cutscenes, and only the English version of that is voiced. There are no Japanese voices for this.
Yeah, I did read that. Do you know the reason why that is?
I assume to sell more copies to stupid Americans.
That's probably a more cynical take on it, but I do believe that I read that somebody, I don't know if it was Matsuno or somebody else, did not want to give the characters voices because he wanted the voices to live in the head of the players.
That sounds like something a Japanese developer would say, and I respect it.
Yes.
They have besmirched his vision with this version of the game, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
They also gave it a 16:9 aspect ratio, which I think they just fucking stretched it.
It looks like that. I was going to ask you that because I've been dabbling with the Android version just to see for research purposes, and it does look stretched as hell to me.
There's actually a PSP mod that will unstretch it.
Hmm.
It also added the Onion Knight and Dark Knight job classes, higher job unlock stat requirements, the addition of Luso from Final Fantasy Tactics A2, and Balthier from Final Fantasy XII as playable characters, a larger party roster, new gear, cooperative and competitive multiplayer, worse sound effects, and crippling slowdown on spell and battle effects.
Oh, wow. Congratulations for getting to experience those.
Sweet and sour, Chris.
I guess we'll find out, but I heard that Balthier is in this game, and I wonder if he is in it in a canonical way, or is he just like a special? Is he like
He just shows up.
show up like
He's Dante
like
and
Noctis?
yeah. Oh, like Noctis and Tekken.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe. If we did Final Fantasy XII ever and we did the character battle tournament on patreon.com, I'm confident Balthier would win.
Yeah, I remember him having the swag of an
Swaggy space pirate, good haircut, Playboy bunny elf girlfriend.
Englishman swag. Did he have an accent?
Yeah.
An English accent?
Of course he did.
Okay. Yeah, he had the kind of swag that only an Englishman can have. And, you know, it can go very wrong for you if you're an Englishman. Like, you could have no swag or all the swag.
Yeah, it's just a pure binary.
I have to think about this a little bit harder, but I think I'm going to stick with that.
Yeah, I agree. Obviously, this is not a complete list of changes for War of the Lions, and hopefully we'll be able to explore more of their differences in real time over the course of this season. The iOS and Android ports, by the way, fixed the slowdown issues and resolved a few of the other bugs and exploits.
You know what it can't fix, though?
What?
Large fingers.
Oh, you got fat fingers, Chris?
No, I actually have small hands, so it's fine with me. Also, I have a Samsung Galaxy S23, and it has a stylus built into it.
Oh, wow, stylus in your telephone.
So that makes it a little bit easier for me to control. But it does very much feel like a game designed for a controller in which the controls were not necessarily adapted to a touchscreen. You just have to use a touchscreen to be the controller. It leaves a little bit to be desired.
Well, I'm glad Square really tried with that one.
Yeah, they really tried to get $12.99 out of me, and they sure as hell did.
It worked. A remake of Final Fantasy Tactics was part of the 2021 NVIDIA leak, and most of that shit has proven to be true over time. But as of this recording, nothing official has been announced for a remake of Final Fantasy Tactics, and Matsuno has claimed he does not know shit, which I believe him, even though he's collaborated with Square since he left on like Final Fantasy 14 expansions. I don't think they would tell him.
Yeah.
Chris, you may be asking, how do you play Final Fantasy Tactics in 2023?
The current year is 2024.
Well, according to PriceCharting.com, that original PlayStation copy of Final Fantasy Tactics, the Black Label, demands $14 for a loose disc and $30 for a complete in-box copy on secondary markets such as Electronic Bay.
That is surprisingly low.
Yeah, that's not actually too bad for a Squaresoft RPG.
Yeah.
The PS1 Classic version is available digitally through a PlayStation 3 for $9.99. And once again, that will be playable on PS3, PSP, or Vita, assuming you can figure out how to buy a PS3 downloadable game in 2024.
Yeah, the PS1 Classic version was the version that I owned. I think I must have had a copy or borrowed a copy from somebody else. And then my sort of renaissance or revival with this game came when that was available for what? Well, those were like $20 in the store, like Best Buy, I think. The PS1 Classics, do you remember?
Oh, okay.
Like the disc?
When I said PS1 Classic, that's what they were literally called on the PS3 store. When you say PS1 Classic, do you mean the fucking mini PlayStation? Because that was also called a PS1 Classic.
No, I'm talking about the green label. What's that?
Oh, it wasn't called Classic.
Oh,
they were million seller. I don't know what the exact name was, but it was the green labels, and they were $20.
Maybe it's just PlayStation Classic or PlayStation.
FakeNet, what was that called?
Initializing FakeNet.
It was the Greatest Hits line, which carried a green label and featured cheaper disc art and a $20 price tag. A game had to sell 150,000 copies before it could become a greatest hit. These releases also, sometimes, contained different revisions of the games.
Good thing we have a FakeNet. But yeah, I think those were like $20 or $30 at Best Buy.
$20, that was their price point.
Very affordable.
They would come back out at $20.
So like that marketing strategy worked on me. It's like, oh, I remember I really loved Final Fantasy Tactics. I have $20. Let's play it. And that's probably the second, third, and fourth time I played this game were on that version.
I would never besmirch my collection with a green label.
Well, I think I must have gotten rid of it because I don't have it anymore.
War of the Lions on PSP is $16 for a loose UMD or $22 for a complete in-box copy. As for mobile versions, that updated War of the Lions is $14 on Apple's App Store. I have no idea how many dollars it demands on Android's marketplace because Android phones are for losers.
You're a loser.
Yes, that's correct. Chris, how much is it on Android?
I can look.
I think you said earlier, but we can look it up in real time.
I said, but I just made up a number.
Okay.
Is it going to show me the price if I already own it, if I go to the Android store?
Chris really led me down with this whole Android research thing. God fucking damn it. FakeNet, how much is the Android version?
Initializing FakeNet.
It's $14.
Through PSN on a PSP or Vita, the digital release of the PSP version of War of the Lions is currently still available for $9.99.
Wouldn't it be a nightmare to try to actually download that? Do you still have to have a...
I think it's the same hoops you got to jump through for the PS3.
Gotcha.
But the Vita may have better access to that store than the PSP or PS3.
Ah, yeah, good point.
There are also a number of PlayStation and PlayStation Portable emulators on personal computer platforms for all of your piracy pleasures. Development history, staff, credits via Moby Games. Directed by
Yasumi Matsuno,
who is also the only credited writer. Matsuno left Quest in 1995 and directed Final Fantasy Tactics for Square. At Quest, Matsuno directed Ogre Battle, The March of the Black Queen, and Tactics Ogre, both originally released for the Super Nintendo, the latter of which was also ported to Saturn and PlayStation the same year.
Wow.
Tactics is where Matsuno started his and Square's journey into the Ivalice shit, with Vagrant Story, Final Fantasy XII, and Final Fantasy XIV also part of the Ivalice mythos. I really hope I'm saying that correctly, or the canon-accepted way. Ivalice? Who knows, man?
I don't know.
I do, and I've already told you the correct answer.
Matsuno directed Vagrant Story and originally directed Final Fantasy XII, but we do not have time to detail what the shit happened with Final Fantasy XII's development, but I blame Mistwalker.
Okay, sure. Mistwalker is an easy scapegoat. A scapegoat?
As I understand it.
I said a scapegoat. I know it's scapegoat.
The Scapegoat's a game, though, so you probably got confused.
I'm just dumb.
As far as I know, the brief story of that is once a lot of Square employees left to follow Sakaguchi to Mistwalker, Matsuno got depressed.
Mm-hmm.
After leaving Square, Matsuno would serve as a writer on Mad World, which is fucking crazy. Matsuno would also design and write the story for Crimson Shroud on 3DS, direct Lost Order on mobile, and write Return to Ivalice and Save the Queen Blades of... How do you want to say that word, Chris?
I think that's Gunhilder.
Scenarios for Final Fantasy XIV, which itself is a member of the Ivalice mythos. This game was designed by Hiroki Ito. He's credited as a designer on both the original and War of the Lions. Ito directed Final Fantasy VI, which I feel like none of the people, including myself, know that.
I think that credit is usually given to Kitase.
Kitase?
Yeah.
FakeNet, am I correct on that?
Initializing FakeNet.
Yoshinori Kitase and Hiroyuki Ito are both given director's credits.
You know, I interviewed Kitase one time. It was awesome.
Cool.
He also directed Final Fantasy IX and would take over Final Fantasy XII after Matsuno left the troubled project. Dungeon Encounters, released for Switch and PlayStation 4 in 2021, was the first game Ito directed after Final Fantasy XII, and if you're like me, you've never heard of this Square-published board game-ass RPG until right now.
I've heard of it.
Have you played it?
No, but I do believe that several of the folks in the RealNet
have played Dungeon Encounters?
Played Dungeon Encounters when it came out and enjoyed it. I cannot believe
they released a game called Dungeon Encounters.
It was very much like a game made for people who like RPG mechanics.
Yeah.
And made that. It's just it's sort of like playing a solo card game almost.
I'm glad the thing is what it is. This was produced by Hironobu Sakaguchi. I don't need to explain who that is.
Nope.
Artist Hiroshi Minagawa is credited with art direction. He came over with Matsuno from Quest. Minagawa has since served as the lead UI designer on Final Fantasy XIV and as the art director for Final Fantasy XVI.
Cool.
Chris, you like UI.
I do like UI. I do like to look at UI and be like, wow, that's cool. I could do that.
Yep, Chris could design the UI for Final Fantasy XIV if he wanted to, but chooses to make this podcast instead for you.
I've taken 4 classes now, maybe 5, I don't know.
Akihiko Yoshida is also a credited artist and also came over from Quest with Matsuno and Minagawa. Yoshida appears to mostly be responsible for character design, having received that same credit for Ogre Battle, Vagrant Story, Final Fantasy XII, Bravely Default, Final Fantasy XIV, and
Nier Automata. Or Automata. The character designs in Ogre Battle are incredible. We're going to talk about them later, actually. So no mention here in the notes of Conquest of the Crystal Palace that Matsuno, I think, worked on.
That is the first I've heard of that. What is that?
It's an NES game. It's a side-scrolling NES game that...
Quest made an NES game?
I'm popping in here from the future because I have some notes on Conquest of the Crystal Palace that I failed to consult during the recording of the podcast. I just want to point out really quickly that this game is known as Matendoji in Japan. It was released in 1990 for the NES. It was indeed developed by Quest and published by Asmik Corporation of America in the US. The most funnest fact of Conquest of the Crystal Palace is that Matendoji roughly translates to Demon Heaven Boy. But it's like a side-scrolling, thing. Slasher. I played a few minutes of it just to get some context for it, and it is a game that plays like a game that is called Conquest of the Crystal Palace. Let's put it that way.
That sounds all right.
It's pretty good. It's nice.
No crystal castles, but
do you know how there's probably probably 50% of side-scrolling NES games feel very janky and weird and not nice and tight like a Mega Man or a Mario or a Castlevania?
Nice and tight like a Mario 3, I'll agree with you. Mario 1 is not that tight, if you ask me.
Well,
but
okay. Way to throw me off my rocker there, Eric. What was I saying? It's one of those. It's in that vein of it's a pretty tight playing NES game.
All right, we'll see our spin-off podcast where I ask Chris if it's better than Shatterhand.
Okay.
Music composed by Hitoshi Sakimoto and Masaharu Iwata. Sakamoto also left Quest to join Matsuno at Square. I have to wonder what the hell that poaching was like at the time. What were all these dudes? Was Quest going under?
I think Quest was going under, yeah.
The duo would eventually found Bass Escape, a music production company, and freelance out their talents. He often collaborates with Iwata, and his work includes selections from Radiant Silvergun, Vagrant Story, Valkyria Chronicles, and most recently, 13 Sentinels.
Cool.
Iwata has credits independent from Sakamoto, including Baroque, Shadow Hearts, Odin Sphere, and motherfucking Bloody Roar 2, the second Beasterizer game.
Beasterizer.
Localization. Originally, I couldn't figure out who localized the original release. In Moby Games, there was not a specific credit for it. Michael Baskett got that credit for Xenogears, Final Fantasy VII, and Saga Frontier, but he's only in Product Development Coordinator for Tactics. Naomi Cooper was also there around that time, but is only credited with Xenogears, Bushido Blade 2, and Saga Frontier. All I could find was one GameFAQs post asking this question. My money at the time would have been on Baskett, but then I asked the RealNet for help in figuring this out. Transcend Crisp found an interview with Richard Honeywood by Jeremy Parrish, in which Honeywood said part of Tactics localization was outsourced, and part of it was done by Baskett. He also found Baskett, Naomi Cooper, and Daisuke Kato listed in the actual credits, providing a screenshot. That seems like a pretty hard evidence to me, Chris. Thank you, Transcend Crisp.
Shout out to TC.
Joseph Reeder, along with Tom Slattery, are credited with the new localization for War of the Lions.
Tom Slattery is the one that did the new Chrono Trigger localization for the Nintendo DS.
How'd you find that?
When he did the localization, he was keenly aware of the original, his name escapes me, localization. And
Woolsey?
Yes. Jeremy, was it Jeremy?
Ted Woolsey.
Crimson Dragons, Ted Woolsey.
Ted Woolsey, whatever his name is. And Tom Slattery did a pretty good job of showing reverence towards that original localization and keeping it nice and tight while also improving upon some of the things from before.
Delicate hands, Chris. Reeder also worked on Final Fantasy X-2, Wonderful 101, and Masuno's own Crimson Shroud. Slattery was on the localization team for Final Fantasy XIII, Tales of Arise, and Catherine Full Body.
Catherine.
Development history and interviews, or the bits of those that I found interesting, is what we're on to now.
Yep.
From a 1997 Famitsu interview with the development team, translated by Schmuppalations. Schmuppalations. Is there an L in there?
There's not. I mean, there's not on this paper that you're showing me, but
there is in real life.
We've always said Schmuppalations on this podcast, but I've never really, letters appear for me, whether they are printed there or not.
They're just abstract concepts, man.
Damn.
This interview is where a lot of Tactics first-hand account development stories come from. Anyway, asking Sakaguchi how the project got started.
The title Final Fantasy Tactics was actually something I thought up 4 years ago. We even took out a trademark on the name. Imagine back in the day if people were reporting on trademarks and copyrights in the way that they were now, and everybody would have been freaking out about it. I'm a strategy game fan myself, and I've been thinking about what Final Fantasy would look like as a strategy game. I'm the type of person who comes up with a name first, so nothing much else had been concretely set down, but there was a Final Fantasy Tactics design document that I had made then. Unfortunately, I was caught up in the development on the main FF series, which were coming out at a quick pace, one every 12 to 18 months, which is fucking crazy to say out loud nowadays. So my plans for Final Fantasy Tactics remain unrealized, but it is true that the kernel of the development goes back 4 years to 1993, 1 year before Wario's Woods came out for the NES.
And Kirby's Adventure.
Yes.
Asking Matsuno how he was given this project.
I've long wanted to make a strategy RPG using the Final Fantasy world and setting, and as a player, I've been wanting to play that game myself. When I came to Square and heard about this game, my immediate response was, please let me do it.
Chris, it's a similar vibe from Shinji Mikami for our God Hand miniseries on Patreon.com, where he said they made the game they wanted to play, that they wanted to make.
Yeah. What's interesting is that Matsuno had essentially already made this game with Tactics Ogre. If you were to put if somebody were to put Tactics Ogre on a screen right now and show it to you, how much of this game have you played? Final Fantasy Tactics, like how many hours?
3.
3 hours. It would be indistinguishable
From Tactics Ogre.
Yeah.
Do you think, again, having not played Tactics Ogre, when I played Dark Souls, it felt like a second attempt at making Demon Souls, like mostly the same game, but if I had a chance to do it over, I would make it this way with all the knowledge that I've learned.
Yeah.
Do you feel that's a similar relationship between Tactics Ogre and Final Fantasy Tactics?
Yeah, that's an extremely on point analogy there, I think. It does feel like he just made the same game again, has, with a new story and with some of the mechanics tightened up. It's been a long time since I've played Tactics Ogre, so it's hard to say exactly what elements were tightened up. But yeah, I would say so. Like, this game is significantly more digestible than Tactics Ogre. Tactics Ogre would have won our poll for this season 6, then you would have been in a lot of trouble. Like, if you feel like you're in trouble right now, you would have been in a lot more trouble because of the experience is a lot tighter.
I think we'll get to it in the notes, but my first hour with this game, I was regretting every choice that I made that got us here.
I have questions for you when we get there.
We'll get there, all right. Sakaguchi goes on to state how Matsuno and Ito threw out basically everything in his short design document. This is very funny to me, just trashing what the main Final Fantasy guy at Square wrote. Chris, you have to believe in yourself and work hard and eat your vegetables. Isn't that what anime teaches us? Or wrestling?
Anime teaches us that, especially the working hard part. The vegetables part,
Matsuno credits Ito with the battle system, saying he handled everything other than the world system.
I don't know what that means.
I don't either. I was trying to think about what that meant with how that...
The overworld stuff?
There's just so many words that get lost in translation, whereas like Japanese directors think of themselves more as planners than directors, and directors are producers. So it's, it's hard to understand and actually state what he meant with that. Matsuno also points out that Ito invented ATB, which I didn't know that. Did you know that? Active Time Battle? I
thought that credit went to Hironobu Sakaguchi, but it makes more sense that one of his underlings would have done that.
He would just take credit for it. Commenting on the dramatic urgency of Matsuno's scenarios, Ito wanted to reflect that in the battle system.
I really wanted to try adding a sense of swashbuckling heroism, like the feeling of a soldier who burst onto an enemy camp and battles his way out.
I feel that, dude.
I feel that too. I think this game does a pretty good job by doing one key thing, and that is like the elevation. The fact that there's elevation, you can get on roofs, go in ditches and stuff like that. I think that really helps give that sense. Which is not something that like another tactics game from this era would have had. Like Front Mission doesn't have that. Tactics Ogre had that, but a Fire Emblem didn't. I don't think Fire Emblem has ever had any kind of elevation in the same way that this game does.
Commenting on the 16 by 16 map size, Matsuno said a 32 by 32 map would have brought tactics down to 30 frames per second, and he was not down with that shit. They wanted tactics to run at a clean 60.
I remember the days when they wanted their games to look clean or to run cleanly.
There's a lot, but there is a comparatively finite number of PS1 games that run at 60.
Yeah.
Sakaguchi got in on that quote too.
Serious versus FTG. What does that mean?
I have no idea.
Serious versus FTG.
Fucking tactics games.
Fucking tactics games players know how annoying frame. Oh, I bet it's fighting tournament gamers, maybe. Fighting game.
It means fighting game.
We're putting that.
Yep.
Serious versus fighting game players know how annoying frame drops can be. When the FPS drops to 30, you'll hear them say, it dropped. We wanted to avoid that for Final Fantasy Tactics.
I do like this interview was conducted when Tactics came out, how people assume 60 frames per second was only a thing valued by, let's say, the last 5 years of games, but it was also a big concern back then. Regarding the music, Matsuno said he would have wanted a more upbeat soundtrack if the conflict was all humans versus monsters. But for humans versus humans, and for a story that is in a hard, serious world, that kind of traditional Final Fantasy soundtrack just would not work.
Right.
Do you agree with that? You don't want Tim's Man of the Sea when you're slicing off the head of your fellow man?
I don't know if I necessarily feel that way about the soundtrack, but I do feel that the fact that they avoid the humans versus monster stuff does help this game sell itself as a serious thing. There's a lot less, let's say, like melodic and light and airy themes that you hear in this game. The music, at least the music that I've listened to thus far, feels like more than a regular Final Fantasy soundtrack. Feels like that it could fit into a movie.
Fit into a movie. It's also reminding me, because of how much time we spent with it, of Suikoden in its soundtrack.
Yeah, that's true.
Sakaguchi comments on seeing a huge whiteboard by Matsuno's desk with a bunch of arrows detailing character relationships. And there's one more random Matsuno quote from this. I just wanted to leave it here.
We also wanted players to find battles intrinsically fun rather than only play for the story. In those regards, rather than an extension of the Final Fantasy series, I hope that players see Final Fantasy Tactics as a whole different take on it. We tried to fill it with ideas that can only be done in a strategy RPG.
Next, we have a 1999 Vagrant Story interview with Matsuno in the Ultimania Guide, once again translated by Schmuplations. Matsuno had this to say regarding the theming of his game, relating Vagrant Story's approach to tactics.
Well, it's interesting. The truth is, the themes I've included in my games have usually reflected the people and the situations I was working in that time. For example, in Final Fantasy Tactics, the theme of class-based society of nobles and commoners that came about because when I joined Square, as you can imagine, there were individuals who were like royalty. Their talent and the social capital they had amassed, it made me doubt whether someone without those gifts could ever succeed there, no matter how hard they tried. And those ideas found their way into the game.
Can you imagine working at a place for how, I can't imagine it was that long before you started work on a game and then just instantly compared your workplace to a class-based society and just making that the foundational text of your video game?
It does feel like the relationship between classes and different classes of people and different people of different like economic status and bloodlines is a thing that he plays with in a lot of his games.
I was going to say, Matsuno usually gets a reputation as writing political stories, and is that usually just shorthand for class-based stories?
It's a good question. Well, I guess we would want to look into it. We'd have to look into the other games a little bit more closely, but Ogre Battle didn't have a ton of writing in it, but in its world that was set up, it was very much a story about a rebellion and the rightful heir.
I didn't make it pretty far through Vagrant Story, but I did play Final Fantasy XII twice, and I don't remember that class-based stuff being a major element of it, other than people mistreating the elves. If you're wondering why Matsuno left Quest, check this quote out.
To go back a bit, after we finished Ogre Battle, Quest was experiencing a staff shortage, and I had to do the user support by myself. People would call in and say stuff like, "This game doesn't make any sense. Who's responsible for this mess? Put him on the line." And I'd respond, "I'm sorry, that would be me. I'm the manager."
Yeah.
In this way, for 4 long months, I got to hear it all straight from the horse's mouth. Psychologically, it was exhausting, but also it was a good learning experience.
Can you, like you just told me I would have a bad time if we played Tactics Ogre instead of Tactics, and can you calling to complain and you get Matsuno on the line?
Yeah.
Like, how fucking down bad was Quest at that point?
If you look at Tactics Ogre, or if you look at Final Fantasy Tactics from without having experience, and you see the field and how the soldiers are lined up, you get an idea of like what kind of game it is, though, I think, right?
Kind of.
Like, you know that there's guys on the map and some of them are going to need to be moved around. You don't
Sure, yeah.
Ogre Battle was not like that. Ogre Battle was just a texture with little gold and silver men marching across in real time across battlefields, liberating cities. And when 2 of those little, let's call them pawns, would get close to each other from opposing forces, it would stop and it would go to a traditional isometric JRPG battle screen where in the 2 parties would battle. They would each take a predefined amount of turns, and then a winner would be declared, and then it would go back to the other map, and then there was a bunch of fucking D&D values that you had to deal with. It was
oh my God.
It is incomprehensible. The original Ogre Battle. With Tactics Ogre, they reined it in and made it more of a what we think of when we say a tactics game. If these calls were about Ogre Battle, I can absolutely see people just being like,
this doesn't make any sense.
What is this?
Does it feel as like primitive and primordial as the way Ys would have bump attack combat for its early games?
No, I think it doesn't feel primitive or primordial at all. It feels like you are playing a war game, like a board game on a table that is 3 times the size of this table that we're sitting at now. And the board is covering everything, and there's 1,000 different cards and 14 different colored dice, and everybody's got their own character sheet. It's a miracle that game came out and people like it.
Yeah.
And I'm one of them.
And led to Tactics. It's like a fucking nightmare to me, Chris. This interview is also where Matsuno says he does not consider himself a writer, only filling that role in Ogre Battle and Tactics, quote, by necessity. He also asked to do the battle system for Tactics, but that request was denied. This interview is also where they ask Yoshida, the character designer, about his sense of style.
In a sense, it comes from my ignorance. Before I joined this industry, I didn't know anything about the sword and sorcery fantasy worlds. So when I was asked to draw monsters in that style, I didn't have any influence from fantasy novels or other similar sources. I could express myself freely. I also consciously did not want to draw what others had already done. And that is very, like, as I'm reading this, I'm like, yes, that is how his art comes through, especially the art from Ogre Battle.
It feels weird to list interviews that are still untranslated, but a 2018 Famitsu article cited the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls in the 1980 Italian novel The Name of the Rose by Umberto Eco as a direct influence on Final Fantasy Tactics for their depictions of a suppressed account of history. Chris, The Name of the Rose was also cited by Josh Sawyer of Obsidian as an influence on Pentiment, one of my favorite games of the last few years. And Chris, The Name of the Rose got a movie in 1986 with Christian Slater, Ron Perlman, and Sean Connery. It's 131 minutes. Could this be bonus content for this season?
I'd watch it.
The Name of the Rose episode?
I'd watch that movie. Yeah, for sure. I had at one point in time planned to read the book, and I never got around to it. Isn't The Name of the Rose the book that people suggest that is perhaps the influence, the strong influence for the Da Vinci Code?
We have already exhausted my knowledge of The Name of the Rose.
Okay.
I can tell you about Pentiment, which I think The Name of the Rose takes place in like the 16th century, so I don't know that it's necessarily...
Well, I'm more so talking about like the esoteric, like religious conspiracy stuff leading to
it's possible.
Thriller
that
scenarios.
Stuff was a major element in Pentiment, and it played with it in interesting ways. So
yeah, I've played a little bit of Pentiment. I should play it again.
Second best game of the year, 2022, Chris.
Started over, yeah. I played it. I don't have Game Pass anymore, so I would have to...
You can buy it on your PS5. How about that?
I could buy it on my Steam Deck, Eric.
That's right. Localization interview. I found an interview at RP Gamer conducted by Michael A. Cunningham with Tom Slattery regarding War of the Lions re-localization. Michael asked Tom if there is anything controversial about that project, and Tom responded.
The whole monotheism, polytheism is something I've seen a lot of people mention. The Church of Glabados is clearly modeled around Christianity, and the religion itself seem to be a monotheistic one. Yet, in the very opening scene of the game, Ovelia's prayer mentions Kamigami, gods, in the undeniable plural. Since the game's script had made it clear that the followers of the world's religions spoke of more than one god, we retain that plurality in the English.
Regarding War of the Lions style, Tom Slattery said this.
Joseph Reeder had already translated the first scene with exactly the same style I had envisioned for the game. So we pretty much just ran from there. I translated the next scene, and then we kept alternating, checking each other's work as we went along. I was assigned as the lead translator on the project since Joe had to leave in the middle to start work on Revenant Wings. It's the Final Fantasy XII DS game, right? But there was never really any need for more than one person to decide the direction. We were on the same wavelength from the start. I don't think we ever discussed the style until other people became involved. We would just follow each other's lead. This was also the first truly insane project I worked on. There were months when I was working 12 or 13 hours a day, 6 to 7 days a week.
Game development.
Working conditions bad.
Finally, there was the Nico Nico broadcast in 2018, originally reported by the French fan site Final Fantasy World. In a promotion for Final Fantasy XIV content, Matsuno was talking about Final Fantasy Tactics and revealed, I think for the first time, a true sequel project Matsuno and Sakaguchi kicked around, just as Vagrant Story was beginning development. Matsuno showed images from his tablet, which was then shot by a television camera, so you're never going to see that in great quality. But it's of a 2D top-down sequel to Final Fantasy Tactics, presumably for the original PlayStation. And you can see these screenshots. To me, they look like Saga Frontier 2.
Really?
With that kind of watercolor style. He also said original development was outsourced and the project was canceled before it ever made it into full production. Time for promotional media.
Wow.
Commercials. The original Final Fantasy Tactics got a 15-second Japanese commercial showcasing CG and real-time footage from the game. It's in English for whatever reason, so here you go. Listen to that.
Inscribe into history. To inscribe into the soul. Final Fantasy Tactics.
Thank you to 83 Chris Aaron on YouTube for that footage. This is but one of the larger collections of short commercials, all in English. My favorite one has the tagline, "Be clever, be ruthless, be dead."
Be dead?
Be dead.
That's what it says. This may be some kind of video trailer. I can't tell. Video is fairly rare in 97, even at trade shows, so I don't know where this came from. Chris, we're not covering Tactics Advance specifically. I know, but we have to talk about the insane 30-second commercial it got in 2003. I don't know if it was for Europe or North American markets, but it's weird as hell. It's in the form of an infomercial with a toll-free number, 1-866-PLAY-TO-WIN in white text at the bottom of the screen. Marche is waiting is flashing on the screen. Then Marche, blonde hair by candlelight, wants to help destroy the crystal in Ivalice. And then there's Ritz, a pink-haired lady who tells the caller, it's all like, an info, like a call bank thing.
Yeah.
Ritz, who has pink hair, tells the caller they may not use her sword or magic without asking first. Finally, there's Newt, a child boy with hair horns who tells the viewer he will become irritable if they do not call. It then cuts the footage of the game and some marketing copy from an unseen narrator. Here, listen to all of that.
My name is Marche. I am a warrior in a land called Ivalice. Can you please help me destroy the crystals so I can leave?
You may call me Ritz, but you may not use my sword, spells, or magic without asking. They are dangerous. If you call, I'll explain.
Newt is my name. Feel free to call. Otherwise, I may become irritable.
The people of Ivalice are standing by to talk about Final Fantasy Tactics Advance, only on Game Boy Advance. Rated E for everyone.
Thank you to Emu Gix on YouTube for that capture. Finally, in 2011, War of the Lions got a non-voice trailer for its release on iOS, showcasing footage from the game, along with text detailing new and important features. Print ads, Chris. Did you ever read gaming magazines?
Yeah.
Of course,
Of
man.
course.
Final Fantasy Tactics got a 2-page spread as an ad in the magazines I was reading at the time, which were GamePro, GameFan, and Electronic Gaming Monthly. It's titled, How to Start the Mother of All Wars, and then has 3 full paragraphs on this process. It's quite the verbose thing. It also contains the ad copy.
Be ruthless, be clever, or be dead.
Across the top are 5 in-game models of characters on horseback charging down a river under the bridge. I would see this ad so many times reading magazines with my friend Kyle that he began to swear the writers were getting closer in each successive magazine ad.
Wow. I believe those are the same riders that are on the front of the box.
The actual box.
Yeah.
And by the way, they are not horseback. Only 25 years later now do I realize they're not on horses, they're on fucking chocobos.
They are indeed.
War of the Lions also got a 2-page magazine ad. One side has 4 screenshots and the game logo, along with the ad copy. Experience new CG cinematics, explore new jobs and missions, meet new characters, wage new multiplayer battles, and behold a new legend.
Wow.
The other page is a colorful collage of who I assume to be the game's heroes and or villains. Literature.
I love literature.
The North American manual for the original game, Chris. I got the scan at archive.org, but we have a preface.
Ooh. Throughout history, wars repeat themselves in various times and places. From these wars, legends of heroes are handed down from generation to generation. Weathered by rumors and the passing of time, the truth may be forgotten. The reality buried under legends.
Is that true?
That's true in real life or in this game?
Either.
Yes.
All right.
Many years ago, a war seethed and erupted into the land of Ivalice. It lasted for 50 years, finally ending when both sides laid down their arms. However, the war had exhausted the people's strength and the country's resources, and the situation within Ivalice gradually became worse. The lords of the 6 ruling families united to guide Ivalice back to prosperity. However, their delicate balance of power soon collapsed. 1 year after the 50-year war had ended, Ivalice's Princess Ovelia was abducted. Prompted by this, conflict grew between 2 families. Galors, ruled by Prince Larg, whose crest was one of a white, and Zeltimfwa, as ruled by Prince Goltana, whose crest was a black lion. The war between the 2 families would later be known as the Lion War. Added to the backdrop of the Lion War was the problem of succession to Ivalice's throne due to the sudden death of the king. You might say, Eric, this is a war of succession. Prince Larg is the elder brother of the Queen Ruvelia, and Prince Goltana is the younger cousin of the dead king.
That's a lot to... What are...
All this is in the game, too.
Yeah.
According to historical record, a young hero named Delita suppressed the Lion War soon after it engulfed Ivalice. There was another young man named Ramza who played a role during the Lion War, though you will not see Ramza's name in any history books. Now, the true story can be told.
Gosh, Chris, after that, it's 11 straight pages of how to play this dang game. It looks really complicated.
Sure is, Eric. We'll figure it out along the way. Trust me. This is going to be one of those exercises where you fall back and I have to catch you. I will catch you, Eric.
Trust fall, Chris.
Yeah, trust fall. Thank you.
The War of the Lions manual has a different preface, which I got from a scan at archive.org.
Sustained by Lord and Light, the twin-headed lions reign over the kingdom of Ivalice. A year has passed since the loss of the 50 Years' War. The prince, though, but 2 years of age, has ascended to the throne, his father having been claimed by sudden malady? Malade? Malady?
Don't ask me, dude.
Too young to rule, the prince requires a regent who would be king in all but name. The queen's brother, Duke Larg, had seemed the obvious choice for the regency. However, fearing the influence of such an appointment would give the queen, the council refused to back him. Instead, they appointed the king's younger cousin, Duke Galtana, as regent. Duke Galtana and Duke Larg were both generals who had distinguished themselves during the 50 Years' War. Duke Galtana counts as ally the greater part of the aristocracy loyal to the crown. However, the fallen nobility and free knights left in the aftermath of the 50 Years' War have aligned themselves with Duke Larg.
This is all gobbledygook to me.
It's in the game too. It's in the, at least in the PS1 version, all this is there in the intro. With Duke Galtana under the banner of the Black Lion and Duke Larg under the one of the White Lion, I guess the stage is set for what history would one day record as the War of the Lions.
Welcome back to the stage of history.
Yeah, exactly. May I briefly summarize this for you? Just
it sounds like somebody kidnapped the princess, Chris.
No, she hasn't been kidnapped yet. It's a war of succession. There are two factions, the White Lions, the Black Lions, the end.
It says the princess was abducted. Does that not mean kidnapped?
Oh. Yeah, but that happens in the game, so I don't know why it's in the intro. Anyway, whatever, go ahead.
The manual also has character bios for Ramza, Delita, Alma, Agrius, Must. Look, the names in this game are fucked and I'm going to mess them up. I deeply apologize. I'm doing my best.
Do you know what's also fucked is that some of the names that you have are going to be spelled slightly different than the names that I have. And
it's going to be a fun
season.
season.
It's going to be great. This is like, you're in for a treat.
Anyway, we're going to read those character bios when their characters are introduced in the video game. Next, Prima put out an official guide for the original, and Brady Games produced an official guidebook for War of the Lions. The Prima guide even got the neon green Greatest Hits brand on it, just like the games. This is insane to me. They made a Greatest Hits version of the guide.
That is weird. I've tried to acquire the guide for the PS1 game on eBay, but I can't.
Try archive.org or your nearest half-price books.
Well, I may try the nearest half-price books, but I want to have the document on the table.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Chris, they cut content out of this game, and the cutting room floor has chronicled all of it for us.
Oh.
There are some unused, this is for the PS1 game, there are some unused areas fully rendered but left out in the final game, including a different battle map of Gate of Linbury Castle, a field map for a hospital and slums, and a battle map for the Wargilus Trade City, and 3 unused cutscene maps for Lasalia.
Sure.
There are also a whole bunch of cut and unused command sets, my favorite being the Hell Magician command, the Magician from Hell.
Cool.
There's also some unused NPC jobs, quoting the text at TCRF.
Many NPCs were given jobs complete with unique descriptions, despite never appearing in battle where these would be seen. None of those jobs have a special command, and most don't work except on the most basic level. Also, the descriptions are copied directly from the game. Typos, mistranslations, bad grammar, and all.
Chris, these NPC jobs include Archduke, Viscount, Warlock, Impure King, Regulator, Angel of Death, and my favorite, the Phony Saint.
Oh man, Phony Saint, the opposite side of the coin of the Blessed White Lady.
Laura Dern, would you like to read the description for Phony Saint?
Yeah, I would love to. Agitator who misleads people with lies and masks. I think you could just take that concept and make a whole goddamn video game about it, right?
Yeah.
Don't underestimate him, although he cannot match the power of a genuine saint. Yeah, he's a phony saint.
That's all true.
It's right there in the name. Congratulations.
There are also 2 unused songs dummied out. Mr. Bear goes to the ballad Apoplexy, the latter of which is a combined version of other songs. There are also 5 unused fanfares. Maybe I'll drop those in right here. Removed from the North American version were the 4 Zodiac Brave story sound novels, which I gather are visual novel adjacent minigames. There's nothing too interesting on cut content for War of the Lions. Chris, contemporary reviews.
This is always one of my favorite sections of that you prepare for our games. I really enjoy these.
Marching through archive.org, looking through scans of old magazines to find the exact text. Yes, I love it too. It takes days. GamePro, February 1998, the one with Resident Evil 2 on the cover. I own this in real life, but also found a scan at archive.org. There's a 2-page ad for Tactics on page 4. But on page 118 is a review by Nob Ogaswara. Get out your GamePro faces, Chris, because Tactics got a 4 in graphics, a 4 in sound, and a 4 in control, and a 4.5 in fun factor.
Wow.
Chris,
yeah. This game is often not fun. It's good, but often it is not fun.
So good doesn't have to be fun?
No.
I agree.
Work can be good, and tactics games are work.
Kind of like recording this podcast is fun, but making it is work.
Yes.
There it is.
This is a tactics podcast, after all.
Chris, when you think of GamePro, you think of quality writing. So here's a bit from this review that I want to share with you, read by you.
The game system is identical to Tactics Ogre, except it has Final Fantasy characters, jobs, magic spells, items, and so on. I mean, that's basically what I said earlier, but it's a little bit more, it's a little drier, a little more succinct there. Yeah.
The review also claims that the player will
lose sleep digesting information.
I love GamePro. I hate that GamePro is what primarily informed my opinions when I was a kid before I moved on to GameFan and EGM. Next, EGM issue 104, March of 98, the one with Yoshi on the cover. Do you want a personal story that I just thought of? I used this magazine to clean up cat shit. Like scrape it off the carpet.
Like a little scooper?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, I found this scan at archive.org. The review is on page 121. 8-4's John Riccardi gave it a 9.5, stating Final Fantasy Tactics was one of the best games he has ever played. He mentions the story is from the Tactics Ogre writer, and I think it's neat that even at the time, Matsuno was getting some respect and name recognition.
Yeah, that's really cool. Especially because, like I said before, Ogre Battle didn't really have much of a story. There was like dialogue and like flavor text for the events, but there was not a lot of like interpersonal character, drama.
But it sounds like it was a game you could detect even then was produced by a madman.
Yeah.
Like you could even feel when you're playing someone's fever dream.
Do you know the feeling that well, actually, I don't know if you ever got this feeling because I don't know if you're as fucking stupid.
I've felt things.
But did you ever rent or play any like Koei strategy game on the Super Nintendo or Genesis or anything?
No, absolutely not.
Like accidentally.
No.
You know what I mean?
I was smarter than that.
Okay. You didn't
The only game I fucked up was High Seas Havoc for Genesis.
Okay. So you didn't go to the video store and be like, this game's called Rise of the Phoenix. That's a cool name. Look, there's a war going on.
Dude, no, they have the box, and you look at the back of the box, and if there's a fucking grid on that box, absolutely not.
But like you wanted to be able to like make some fucking arrow towers and shoot arrows over the wall and like, do sieges.
Most of my game rental decisions were informed by magazines. Like I didn't go there flipping the back of I mean, like I even had like a list of like 10 games to get once the one I wanted was inevitably out.
Yeah, yeah. Well, if you take the kind of the level of how do you say flabbergast as a noun? Of flabbergastedness?
This is a fantastic question. I'm really thinking about it.
Flabbergastedness, I think is what we're going to have to go with.
Unwelcome surprise?
Yeah, if you measure the level of unwelcome surprise that one will receive by renting, say, Rise of the Phoenix, Romance of the Three Kingdoms, PTO, fucking Aerobiz, Supersonic.
Isn't like, not a game that isn't something that you don't like, but just something that you can't understand. Or don't like and is too much?
You didn't know that a video game was capable of.
Oh, okay.
You didn't know a video game was going to ask you to manage an airport. Okay?
Fucking Aerobiz.
Yes. Right? So...
Dude, you go home on a fucking Friday night with an airport management sim instead of fucking Uniracers like you wanted.
Yes, yes. And so Ogre Battle had that quality to it, but because some of it was encased in like JRPG mechanics and really cool character designs, that's what got me over the edge. I was never able to get over the edge in some of those other simulation games, but that is what got me there. It felt more dynamic and more like, it felt less like I was scrolling through menus, even though that's kind of what you're doing.
I do think in the age of Game Pass and so many choices these days, there's something lost on getting home with a game you fucking hate at Friday from Blockbuster, and you've got nothing else for the weekend, and you make yourself play it. In that same EGM, Kristen Boyer gave it a 9, Dan Shu gave it an 8.5, and Chris, I assume Johnson, gave it an 8.5. On the sidebar, the best feature was the job system, and the worst feature was the 16 by 16 size of the battlefields. But sorry, Point Blank and Resident Evil 2 were the co-winners of Game of the Month. Chris, I think it's tough to disagree with that assessment, though. RE2 and Point Blank, fantastic fucking games.
What is Point Blank?
Namco light gun shooter, about like 50 light gun mini games. It was basically WarioWare with a light gun shooter.
Oh, like Carnival kind of games?
A little bit.
Did it have an arcade counterpart?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was Point Blank arcade.
Yeah, I remember playing that a lot, yeah.
Game Fan, February 1998. Review on page 66, just after the 4-page spread on Klonoa. Once again, scan available at archive.org. ECM, which was Eric Mylonis, who passed away in 2018, reviewed it. He said,
Better than Final Fantasy VII? In my deranged opinion, yes.
Of course, he also said,
The story itself was flat out busted. It seemed as if it was translated by a random newcomer in the PR department with the newest edition of Webster's Japanese to English dictionary, ha ha ha, rather than Square's usual ace localizers.
He also called it
Tactics Ogre with a different story and better graphics.
Which is what Chris called it.
Yeah.
Finally, who else? Supergiant Greg Kasavin reviewed it for GameSpot. Please see our God Hand, Xenosaga, and Panzer Dragon Orta episodes seasons for more hot Kasavin takes. Anyway, he said,
This is a work of the highest quality in every respect, from the impressive 3D terrain to the expertly animated characters to the gorgeous soundtrack to the sheer volume of available gameplay options. Final Fantasy Tactics is a masterpiece.
War of the Lions also got reviews because we're doing 2 games. A product of the digital age, War of the Lions has an 88 critic average at Metacritic. Edge, in November 2007 issue, gave War of the Lions a 9 out of 10 and said this.
This stands as one of video gaming's greatest achievements. One finally properly served by an excellent English translation to reveal a game that feels far fresher than its age, setting, and rivals might otherwise suggest.
At GameSpot, Kevin Van Ord, who is currently a writer at Larian Studios, gave War of the Lions an 8.
While some games don't withstand the test of time, others, like the commonly praised Final Fantasy Tactics, exist in a state of pristine stasis, never changing, yet standing proud at the head of the class and rarely bested by legions of pretenders to the throne.
EGM's review in the November 2007 issue, which I got at archive.org, Jeremy Parrish gave War of the Lions an 8.5.
This PS1 classic may not be perfect, but its class-based progression system is super addictive, offering tons of character customization and a rewarding sense of accomplishment.
James Milkey, who we referenced extensively in our Panzer Dragon miniseries, also gave it an 8.5. Milkey said something that, while complimentary then, worries me now.
The dialogue from the original Tactics wasn't so bad as it was blunt. The redone script feels like Joss Whedon got a hold of it, and that's a good thing.
Chris, is that a good thing?
I mean, I don't know if it's a good thing that Joss Whedon gets a hold of your script, but I don't know if I really see the
Whedonness of it.
I don't know if I see where he's going here. From what I've seen of it, I don't necessarily agree.
Finally, Dan Shu, who was just laid off from Blizzard, who also reviewed the original game, gave it an 8. Unrelated, but I was flipping through this magazine, and on page 132 and 133 of this same issue, Jeremy Parrish attempted to wade through the plot of Xenogears in 10 capsulized points.
Good. Wow.
Lastly, we have motherfucking X-Play.
Oh, no.
That G4 show, which needed 2 minutes and 46 seconds to give War of the Lions a 4 out of 5. Here are some choice quotes.
But let's face it, Final Fantasy fans aren't really known for busy on-the-go lifestyles.
And
you can expect that most of them will still play this at home, between alternating bouts of cuddling Tenchi Muyo novelty pillows and sobbing.
You've quite a mouth on you, princess.
And
the game basically boils down to the amounts of damage your collection of cutie pie warriors do to the bad guys.
Was bad guys one word in there? This is spoken dialogue.
It's spoken, yeah, I wrote that.
So you're probably thinking, why the hell would anyone voluntarily choose to play something this overly complicated?
But Chris, that was all a setup for...
Here's the thing. Once we came to grasps with the system, we found ourselves taking pleasure in the meticulous micromanagement.
They also complain about the slowdown. Chris, let's super briefly talk about Square's PSP library.
Yeah, tell me all about it. I've never been a PSP owner. I'm familiar with many of these games, but please.
In the early years of the PSP's life, Square reissued Valkyrie Profile, those PS1 remakes of Final Fantasy 1 and 2, remade the first 2 Star Oceans, and produced relatively high-budgeted original titles like Crisis Core, Final Fantasy VII, The Third Birthday, Final Fantasy Type 0, 2 Dissidia games, and Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep. Other than Third Birthday, which essentially functioned as the third Parasite Eve game, none of those felt like essential core titles, but at the same time, they all felt like something special. Dissidia was a wild idea, especially as a Super Smash Bros. Was ascending. The compilation of Final Fantasy VII got a legitimate prequel to Crisis Core, and thankfully, the rise of the PSP kept Third Birthday and Final Fantasy Type 0 out of mobile phone hell that doomed Final Fantasy VII Before Crisis and Xenosaga Pied Piper. The PSP was a beautiful system. Want to talk about some mods?
Let's talk about some mods.
Introduce a new section, Chris. It's called Mods. It's where we talk about some of the possible mods to these games. There are so many that an entire website exists to support it at ffhactics.com.
Hactics, wow.
For the original Tactics, and thank you to the Black Barth on Reddit for compiling a lot of these, there are all kinds of gameplay overhauls, hacks, and story mods. But the 2 most popular for the PS1 Tactics is the Lion War, which injects the War of the Lions new content into the PS1 game, as well as Lion War of the Lions, which has that, but also updates the original script to fall more in line with War of the Lions script. Chris, it is an Ouroboros of tactics content.
Okay, that's interesting. I didn't know that exists. I'm still going to play the vanilla version myself, just because for the purposes of analyzing the game as it was in the state that it came out.
There's also a mod that replaces all NPCs with monsters because fuck it, why not? War of the Lions has its own mods. The most popular seems to be the Lion War, which I can't tell because Final Fantasy Tactics is a forum organized in a way that does not make sense to me, an adult human, male, age 40. But I think it adds stuff and rewrites the script to be more in line with the original. The more I kept reading about it, the more I had no context for anything it was talking about. Via romhacking.net, I'm using the Final Fantasy Tactics War of the Lions tweak, which fixes slowdown, allows direct control of guest characters, makes no spell or item missable, opens the Poacher's Den earlier, opens multiplayer items to campaign, and other shit I don't quite understand as it's writing.
Cool.
Spoilers, I used this for about 10 minutes, then redid the game. We'll go why in real time.
Okay.
Memories. I have none. I never played this game before. Chris, what do you know?
Someone loaned me this game, Eric, around the time in which it was released. I cannot figure out who this person was. I have been thinking and praying upon it, and I don't know where I got it at. But I did get it and play it.
How do you not know this critical element of the origin story?
I know. It's very...
Kid down the street, kid at school, kid at work?
It was probably... This was 98, right?
Yeah. So you were not employed yet?
Maybe I did. I don't know. But I think maybe it was kid in neighborhood, because there was another RPG guy in my neighborhood. This was during the height of Squaresoft and its PS1 bangers, so I was trying to grab everything possible at that point in time. And fun fact, I had not played Tactics Ogre yet. I played Final Fantasy Tactics before I played Tactics Ogre, because I think it was a timing thing, because of course Tactics Ogre did not come out on the Super Nintendo, despite it being in fucking Nintendo Power a couple times.
You were a Nintendo Power reader?
It never came out. And when it came to the PlayStation, I just never got a hold of it. It was just not in my circle of influence.
Obviously didn't import it for your Saturn either, did you?
No, because I needed to be able to read, and also I don't have a Saturn. I do remember struggling mightily with this game, but I loved how different it felt from everything else. So probably a lot of the struggles that you are experiencing now, I experienced back then when I was 17 or whatever. Also, Eric, I don't know if you know this about me, but dioramas, they always get me. The verticality of the maps kind of look like a diorama a little bit. I fall for it. Isometric diorama, I fall for it.
Chris, if dioramas always get you, how come you haven't played Fantasian?
Because I don't have an Apple telephone.
That'll do it.
Yes, if that game comes to Steam or whatever, I will play it. Also, I didn't quite have the vocabulary to qualify it at the time, but when I think back, Final Fantasy Tactics obviously was like very serious and political. It dealt with real world problems, like secret church history suppression and
like Xenogears,
aristocratic fail sons, like all that kind of stuff that was like serious back then. Video games weren't talking about these kind of things. The same kind of dopamine drips that one may get when they first read Game of Thrones after never really experiencing a fantasy novel that takes itself quite that seriously, I got from Final Fantasy Tactics initially. Things of that nature. I never played War of the Lions version, by the way. Never played it. Haven't touched it. So I will not be able to offer any memories on the War of the Lions version. The last time I played Final Fantasy Tactics, though, I was sleeping on a friend's couch until the lease of my apartment was starting.
Okay. And there was a PS2 there?
There was a
or a PS3, I guess, could also play Tactics Disc.
It's a PS2, probably. This was like the summer of like 2002, 2003, something like that. And no one was doing anything in that apartment that summer except for working. This was like a college time. So everybody was just like doing summer jobs and hanging out. And that was what was going on. We all had different schedules, but we all decided to play Final Fantasy Tactics together, where we would just alternate, like hot seat the controller.
Really?
And play through it. But we would only progress the plot when all three of us were home at the same time.
I see.
So we would do random battles and like mess with the mechanics and recruit characters and unlock job classes and like do all kinds of the weird game breaking stuff that you can do now if you go to the internet and read how to do it. We were just figuring that stuff out on our own because we had idle time to figure that kind of stuff out. It was beautiful. So it gave us like an infinite amount of time to do random battles and make weird and broken characters. And so as a result of this, we implemented a rule where we would not use any story characters that you recruit along the way. There's a couple of them that are really powerful and really broken, but we decided that we were only going to use our OCs to beat the game, and it was incredibly fun. So that was my first experience with Final Fantasy Tactics, messing with any of the real broken job classes like the calculator, or I think it's called the mathematician in the War of the Lions version, where you can do damage to like characters that have even numbered levels and stuff like that, like all kinds of like crazy machinations that you're able to build out. And so that was the last time I played it was that experience, and I hold that experience quite near and dear to my heart. It was a lot of fun.
Chris, what is the Ogre Battle acquisition story as you referenced on Anime on DVD episode 10?
Yeah, let me open a drink. In preparation for this podcast, I was trying to figure out why I got into Ogre Battle, because who in their right mind would get into Ogre Battle for the reasons that I mentioned before, with the impenetrable Aerobiz supersonic type games,
Only psychos, Chris.
Yeah, so I traced it back to 1995 Nintendo Power April, volume 71. The issue had a Stargate cover.
Oh, God.
Advertising the Super Nintendo's adaptation of the film as a portal to adventure. Get it?
Roland Emmerich's best film is Your Portal to Adventure.
Mm-hmm. Also, this issue featured previews of Boogerman and Time Cop.
We played Time Cop to completion at Mark's one time. Go ahead.
Really?
Yeah,
wow.
It fucking sucks.
Cool. Thanks, Mark.
You're welcome, Chris.
But on page 35, Nintendo Power showcased a new spread, like a new subsection. It was called the Epic Center.
Oh.
Do you remember the Epic Center?
I didn't read Nintendo Power, Chris.
Oh. I'm not sure if this was like the first edition of the Epic Center. It was treating the reader as if it was your first exposure to any video game more complex than Mario. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
The first few paragraphs of the Epic Center, the anonymous writer, because Nintendo Power was
of course, right.
Was all,
no bylines.
There was no bylines. Attempted to manifest this like meta genre. It was called the Epic, right?
Uh-huh.
You ready for the Epic?
I can't wait. Like, I know GamePro was aimed at a younger audience, but Nintendo Power just seemed, even by my standards at the time, as like just utterly juvenile. Like depressingly for little kids.
It was trying to simplify the conversation around more complex games, but I think really it just made more confusing points.
Yeah.
But anyway, here are the subgenres of the Epic as written by Nintendo Power. RPGs were defined, this is not word for word, this is just a summary. RPGs were defined as games where the central characters grow in ability over time and feature menu-based combat, like Final Fantasy. You've heard of those, right?
Menu-based combat.
Yes. Adventure games are, of course, games where the player maintains direct control over the character, like, Legend of Zelda, Secret of Mana, Terranigma.
Yeah, I'm sure it talks about Terranigma all the time.
Terranigma was not cited in this. Strategy games were games where you move multiple units across the map, usually involving a war scenario. Like war games like PTO and Operation Europe, Rise of the Phoenix, Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Those
Aerobiz.
Those kind of joints. Aerobiz, yeah. Actually, no, I think Aerobiz belongs to the
more simulation as opposed to war management.
The fourth genre, which was simulation, which those were games that attempted to simulate real-world systems or machines, like Pilot Wings or SimCity, of course. That's the city simulator. I don't know if you've heard of SimCity, but so as a 12-year-old in 1995, I was already familiar with the various machinations of the so-called epic genre because I had played Dragon Warrior during the Nintendo Power distribution of extra copies of Dragon Warrior.
Yeah.
Like, we couldn't figure that shit out, or my friends couldn't figure it out, but I figured it out because I was like, you got to go to the store.
Chris was a smart friend.
Buy a club.
Get the Radiant spell.
Then you can kill the slime. Also played SimCity on DOS, so, I was
fucking real cool guy over here.
In second grade, I was the keeper of lore and knowledge for my circle of friends playthrough of Link to the Past. Like, I was out there dealing tips and secrets and stuff like that. And of course, I got really into Final Fantasy III, as it was called at the time. Of course, I don't know if you know this fact, but it was Final Fantasy III then, but it's Final Fantasy VI now. I'm not sure if you've heard of that, just to let you know.
Yeah, well, I owned the NBA Jam with Charles Barkley in it, and that's why I had friends. So
I also own that copy. It's probably in that drawer behind you. So anyway, I'm flipping through this and reading this, and then you get to this like 4-page spread, and there was this little introductory paragraph that said, but remember that some games cross over categories by sharing several characteristics. In fact, this month's feature game, Ogre Battle, successfully mixes all three of these genres.
Wow, what a great value.
I turned to it, 6-page spread, Ogre Battle, March of the Black Queen. The lead was fantastic. It said, Ogre Battle from Enix fulfills an ancient prophecy that one day a game would appear for both RPG and strategy wargamers, and that forever after their homes would ring with the clash of swords and shake from the feet of marching armies. This fantasy becomes reality today.
Wonderful sign-off line. This fantasy becomes reality. Guys, chef's kiss.
Anyway, the visual is beautiful. There were two advancing armies that were marching towards one another across the middle of a 2-page spread. On the left, there was like a green dragon. There was a fairy. There was a mermaid. There was a blue demon holding the scythe, a Valkyrie wearing a winged helmet, and a man with a whip who would serve as the army's beastmaster.
That's all genres in one, Chris.
On the right, there was a giant with a club and a bearskin helmet, a clergy person of some sort, probably a healer, a knight in rusting armor, a long-haired man who would later be revealed to be a doll mage. Ogre Battle had doll mages.
Okay.
At the back of the line, there was a warrior with a crescent moon on his helmet, a cloaked wizard, and a weak-looking soldier with a short sword. They were all crunchily proportioned, like like you could just put these fuckers in a Super Nintendo game. There's not a divergence in like what the artist drew and what was in the game. Like let's say like a Yoshitaka Amino drawing for Final Fantasy, then it gets translated into a sprite, and there's a huge divergence on what is on. These would translate perfectly to the Super Nintendo in sprites. I had to have this shit, Eric. This art was Ogre Battle. It represented Ogre Battle. The diversity of in-game characters and how they would look in the game.
When you reached a fever pitch and had to have a new video game, how did you get that when you were a young boy without income?
I had to have this thing. The scene that I just described would eventually become the box art for Ogre Battle's limited North American release, which Enix only distributed 25,000 copies of Ogre Battle in North America for the Super Nintendo.
Enix sucked at distribution.
Yeah. And also, like, I don't know if they really expected this game to sell.
You bought this instead of Evo, The Search for Eden?
I did. I was sold on this game instantly after reading all about it. It was going to be the grandest of RPGs and the largest of all scales possible in video games.
The last game you'll ever need.
Yeah, this was the No Man's Sky of my life, right? of my 12-year-old
Don't
life.
say that.
Yeah.
No Man's Sky release or No Man's Sky now?
No Man's Sky, what people thought it was going to be, or
Okay.
what, the hype cycle or whatever you want to call it. So the local Babbages told my parents that they would hold a copy for us, right?
Great.
Yeah, because that's what they did.
Yep.
We arrived on the release date of when they said they would have it, and those bastards did not have a copy. They had sold all of their copies. None of the other stores in the mall, which I don't know if there were any other ones that sold video games, but nowhere else that we could find had a copy of Ogre Battle.
Quick question here, just because I went through similar things. Did you call and they said they had a copy, or did mom call and say they had a copy?
I think mom did, or dad.
Okay. So in my experience, mom may have told you they called and said that, and even brought you there, having no intention to have ever called in the past or buy that game once you got there.
Well, I think in this case, my parents detected how much I wanted this game and how much I cared about this and how much life this game was going to give me.
This was like all you were hanging on to as a kid. It's like this, or you walk into a river.
It really was like it. The only feeling that was analogous that I've ever had in my life was the feeling of like when we were going to find out if Brooke was pregnant with our kids. We had no embryos left, so it was like this was all or nothing.
Last shot, yeah. Been there, bud.
And that feeling of like everything is going to be fucked if it doesn't happen, if it didn't work. That was the same because I didn't have Ogre Battle.
This makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
This do or die moment of your life, this divergence point for how your life is going to go.
Yeah.
Was whether or not you got Tactics Ogre or if the fucking IVF worked.
Yes. Those are the two events of my life.
Did we buy children or depression?
I was fully of the age of like,
that's it.
12-year-old boys shouldn't cry about video games, but I was devastated. Like for days. But luckily, my father is a hero. He pursued a copy of Ogre Battle at a small rental store here in Louisville, Kentucky. It was called New Release Video. It was in the Hikes Point neighborhood next to where the Earlers used to be.
God, I never heard of that place. We went to all of them too because we would always get outstanding late fees. My parents couldn't go back to whatever one for a period of time.
I think my dad knew the owner or had some familiarity with him. We went through all that. That's where I used to rent Godzilla movies from. We've talked about that before.
Good, solid store.
He knew a guy. He had a guy. They had a copy of Ogre Battle.
You bought the store around. Your dad purchased the rental copy?
He convinced the guy to sell it to him. And he never told me how much he paid for it. I'm not sure if he remembers, but I bet that he paid at least $100 for it.
I was going to say 2 to 3 times the value.
Yeah. And that, I checked to see what that would be adjusted for inflation. And that's about $170 in today's money.
Yeah.
Strangely enough, I sold that game on eBay.
Fucking asshole.
For like $200 or something.
You sold a precious childhood memento video game.
We've talked about this. Maybe I do regret selling that one a little bit.
That cartridge had a story.
I know.
The story now belongs to someone else, and they don't know it.
I know, and I failed to notice that when I was kind of going through some...
Inside this room somewhere, it's the copy of Xenogears that I looked at Target.
Yeah.
Now you have it.
Yeah. Well, I won't sell that one, I promise that. So I had it, Eric.
You did it.
But there were some other lingering questions.
May I interrupt you?
Yeah.
Just real quickly and say it would have been fucking awesome if you hated it after your dad gave it to you and refused to play it and cried. Go ahead.
Well, that could happen because like that game is, like I said before, impenetrable for somebody who didn't have like any context for it at all. I do think that anybody that would like go to new release video and rent Ogre Battle and then play it,
they were asking for it,
be like, what the fuck is this? But Eric, someone had already rented this and played it.
Okay.
And there was a save file already on it. The character's name was Amoeba. I remember this. And it wasn't fully through the game. It was like through a third of the game. And it was like a perfect playthrough. You know how fucking hard it is to like have a perfect charisma, alignment, and reputation in Ogre Battle? Very difficult.
Amoeba, show yourself.
So I always wonder, like, who's Amoeba? How did you do this? Because Amoeba was the only way I could ever do a playthrough where I could get like the very powerful sword and give it to Satan, so Satan would join my team and like crater my
Satan, like Satan?
His name was Gelf.
Okay.
Gelf the demon.
Yep.
But the only way to get that was to have a very like almost perfect playthrough, get a very important sword, and then betray the Holy Lord or whatever and give it to Gelf, and then become evil.
Right, of course. I knew all that. I was just checking to see if you knew.
Anyway, like I've always wondered who is Amoeba, who rented this game, and who figured this fucking game out.
Yeah. Did you figure this out?
No.
Oh, I thought you were about to tell me like some Dateline investigation where you like located the Louisville amoeba.
No, that is one of the great unsolved mysteries of my life. Also, they chose a female avatar, so I always assumed it was a lady.
Oh, cool.
Probably because if you're a man, you've got to select a male character.
Yeah,
no one wants to play as a female.
No, you get made fun of at school for the game that you definitely wouldn't get made fun of for playing.
Yeah, exactly. And so Ogre Battle is what led me into sort of the Matsuno world, the tactics world, and helped develop my taste for strategy games because I was a big Warcraft guy, Red Alert, Command & Conquer, all that kind of stuff.
Chris, I've done 4 solo podcasts on origin stories of video games, and that was more interesting than any of mine. So
I actually wrote this a while back to try to do something like that, but I never really had time to do it, so I decided I would adapt it for this podcast.
In this episode.
Yeah.
Nice.
So there's a lot more in here, so maybe one day I will do that, but
get the full director's cut coming soon to Retrograde Amnesia before 2027. I don't have any direct memories of this game, but I was on the Final Fantasy VII message boards I posted at in 98 and 99 on AOL, and there is a Final Fantasy Tactics subforum, but everybody at the main board thought everyone who posted it, the Tactics board, were subhuman mutants.
Really?
Yeah, we looked down upon them.
You didn't know what you were missing.
Still don't. However, we're playing this game in 2024. And a first for Retrograde Amnesia, I am not playing the game on original hardware.
Oh, wow.
I'm playing via the PPSSPP PlayStation Portable emulator on my personal computer. I tried to figure out how to play it on my Vita, but was afraid of bricking the thing. I applied a hack to fix the slowdown. The patch was originally made by Archemic and then reworked by Eternal238. I got it at romhacking.net.
Wow.
And again, I briefly experimented with that different hack, which we'll get to later. What are we counting? We're not counting something. Famously, we count the toilets in Chrono Cross,
chicken wusses in Final Fantasy VIII,
war crimes in Suikoden.
Yeah, also Invisible Hands of Destiny in Suikoden.
Yeah, Suikoden 1.
And Catholic schoolboy activation phrases in Xenosaga.
Yeah.
And what's the other one?
Whiffs of Xenogears.
Whiffs of Xenogears, yeah. I don't think we're going to count anything unless something comes up along the way, but I think what we're going to do is do a continual power ranking of ye old English insults.
Yes, and that traditionally applies to the War of the Lions version of the game, but also there are some nuggets in the original translation as well.
A little bit.
Things that we do not understand because we're Americans, but that are apparently quite common to all Britons, and fake net operaters.
Oh, yes, sure.
You daft cows are as thick as castle walls.
So I think that'll be a fun exercise.
Yeah.
So a little divergent from what we normally do.
It's kind of I know it when I see it type thing, and we'll get to it. But the one that I was kind of noticing it when I was playing, but the one that set it off when I had to text Chris was when someone called somebody else a common footpad.
Yes.
I was like, okay, man.
Yeah.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Next, resource credits. I checked it, obviously, but I want to credit Most Seriousness, a.k.a. Revenant Things, a.k.a. Kyle Johnston's transcription for the War of the Lions script on GameFAQs. There are some lapses, but overall, it's like 98% accurate and a huge time saver for me when I'm trying to work dialogue into the show notes.
Cool.
All I've got left is expectations. You go first.
All right, expectations, Eric. I want to discover whether or not this game's mechanics hold up, how well they hold up, I guess I should say. Or are my memories mostly flavored by the novelty of everything and how much fun I had with the game during those experiences back on the couch? Outside of maybe Fire Emblem Three Houses, there hasn't been a strategy RPG that has really had the same essence as the Matsuno games, in my opinion, at least that I've experienced.
It's strange that he was only allowed to make, 3?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. And in terms of like a grid-based movement, only 2, really. And I only throw Fire Emblem Three Houses in there just because there is like some element of political drama in that. And I wonder if that's because his early games had like that impenetrable nature that we've been talking about. I'm not really sure. But I don't really remember a ton of the plot beats in this game. I remember like the overall essence of the game. And I'd love to find out like what is that essence and whether it's something that we've seen in other strategy RPGs. And if we haven't, then why? Also, I started thinking about Suikoden 2, Please See Season 4. Part 2, but I think Suikoden 2 did a pretty good job of like marrying a personal story and a political story. And I wonder if Final Fantasy Tactics can do the same thing. And are we going to have as many conversations about Ramza and Delita's personal struggles as when we talked about the personal struggles of Ryo, Nanami, and Jowie in Suikoden 2. Also, my final expectation is during the course of this podcast, I would like to learn what is wrong with Eric.
Okay, well, good luck with that because I still haven't figured that out either. So if you figure it out, please let me know.
Just the section of your brain that has been unable to digest these games, and hopefully we can help you get over that hump. After this, you're going to be playing XCOM on Iron Man mode.
Yeah, totally. I played XCOM for about 20 minutes one time. My expectations, people who played Final Fantasy Tactics in its time and now kind of lose their minds today when they talk about how good it is or how strong their memories of it are.
Yeah.
My perception of Tactics was always the brainy companion for Final Fantasy VII, which, in my own brain at the time, was one of the most complex games I had ever played, Final Fantasy VII. I wasn't out there looking for anything significantly more advanced than that. Keep in mind, my game diet in the late 90s was shooters, NBA Jam, fighting games, third-person shooters, and platformers, which means the game I enjoyed relied on quick action or improvisation and rarely demanded any sort of planning or test of patience. I also still maintain a fear of investing time into a game and failing to make any sort of measurable progress. Dark Souls rewrote part of my brain to accept that leveling up the player is as important as leveling up the character, but I still find that concept difficult to spread to non-Souls genres.
Souls is one of the things I think about when I think about like how or why you don't like games like this, because Souls games require a lot of the same elements as tactics games require in terms of planning and preparation. You just don't need the deftness or the physical.
Yeah, I was going to say, it still requires a lot of physical dexterity to get a lot of Souls challenges down, which I tend to excel at. I also hope that my tactics battles will tell stories consistent with a personalized narrative inside of an overarching story. I want to feel a sense of ownership over my battles and the choices that are determined by my heroic victories.
Oh, great. I think this game can deliver that, but also as a preview with me playing around with the Android version today, on the second battle, at the onset, I set every character to AI and then got in the shower and then got out and I won.
Cool. I think with the version that I played, if you choose AI, you have to choose it every single time the choice comes up. Yeah.
That might be a difference, yeah.
Sorry, I was dumbfounded by the game playing itself.
Yeah.
And finally, I'm curious how Tactics handles itself as a political drama. The same was said of Final Fantasy XII, a game Matsuno directed most of. And I love Final Fantasy XII, but I found the political aspects of its narrative amounting to different people making power plays for thrones in positions that I found boring. When someone calls a game or movie or a TV show a political drama, I just assume it's going to be a lot of backstabbing and light class warfare. I wonder if Final Fantasy Tactics will slot into all of that.
I do too. I also wonder.
That's all I've got.
That's all you've got?
I hope I like this video game.
I hope you like it too.
I think we should state this isn't my first tactics game. I reviewed Jeanne d'Arc for PSP in 2008, but I have no memory of it.
Really?
Yeah.
Intro episode.
Meaty and beefy.
Let's consult the RealNet.
Initializing RealNet.
Hello, RealNet. It really is nice to see everyone again. WP asks if we're getting the Shure. Yes, we're getting the Shure. We're getting a Shure. The microphone that I talked about before we started recording.
Yes.
On the stream. Yeah, we'll have it.
Are you sure?
I'm sure. We're gonna have one of them tomorrow, and we're gonna see how well it does, and then we will get another one if it does well. Cal L says, I'm in a store, so I can't listen right now, but I can see the defeat in Eric's eyes.
I've gotten much better from my initial impression where I thought the world was going to end.
Okay, good. I'm glad. We're making it here, everybody. Eric Vernon says, the ultimate tactic makes someone who doesn't play tactics games beat one for work. It's a long play, man. WP says squires and chemists only. Sorry.
All my guys are squires. Is that good?
Well, they're going to be squires for a little while, but then eventually you'll be able to job level them up to other things.
Can I give you a light hint of how I name I'm naming my characters based on theme?
Okay.
Can you name your characters in the PS1 version? All
yes.
the recruits? Everyone is getting named after a new metal band.
Oh, good. I haven't recruited any characters yet, but The only names that I've settled on is I'm going to have a Hornst and a Lester.
Good.
At the suggestion of the RealNet.
Please see our Xenosaga season for what Chris is talking about.
Yeah. WP says 2.4 million is huge for a niche genre. In terms of sales. It does have the Final Fantasy name on it, though, so that's what kind of throws me off.
Coming off the heat of Final Fantasy VII, I think Saga Frontier is even after this, right? So it's just, you'd think it would have, if Saga's Frontier sold well off that heat, then you think Tactics would do even better.
Yeah. WP also points out, this is important in terms of, we talked about Fire Emblem earlier in the podcast, but Fire Emblem only got big with Awakening and waifus.
Yeah, that's true. With that 8.4 localization.
It's funny because Jesse wrote this at 7:12 p.m., which was like an hour and a half ago, but you mean your brain doesn't default to Jeanne d'Arc, the mid-alts tactics game where Joan of Arc becomes a magical girl and teams up with a serial killer to save France?
As far as I know, that's a document of historical record.
Yeah. WP talks about the slowdown on the PSP version, and it says the slowdown is weird because it's like a line of code that has been patched out for the mods. That's all they did.
Yeah, it's not due to the PSP's hardware, it is just in the code.
I have Airwolf. Haven't seen I have Airwolf in a while. Hello.
Welcome back.
I haven't played War of the Lions, but I don't care for what I've seen of the translation in War of the Lions, or I guess I'm really attached to some of the lines from the original.
Spoilers for this show, I'm having a ball.
Good, with the words? Yeah. From what I've seen in the bits I've played, I think it's tremendous, but there is a quality to the original translation that also would allow one to have a ball with the words.
Sure, yeah, I just think it's I don't know, but I assume it's two different perspectives. And obviously, I think you fall in love with whatever one you play first.
Yeah. Ragnar says, I believe the recording of Retro AM Season 6 will manifest the announcement of a Tactics remake in 2024.
That's the pattern.
Yeah, but will it ever come out? Because that Suikoden one's still not out. I'm starting to think it's never going to come out.
I mean, Konami is the biggest black box in all of major Japanese publishers.
Yeah. Cosmos says, those Final Fantasy XIV scenarios, the Ivalice ones, are very good, especially the Save the Queen one.
I've heard they were very well reviewed.
We should...
How? How are we going to play Final Fantasy XIV, Chris? Do you have time for that? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
We should look at those on YouTube. I just want to look at... I want to watch a playthrough of one of those scenarios on... I know it's a...
Actually, that could be bonus. Finish the game and then look at those scenarios and then talk about it as if it were a movie.
If it's worth it, yeah, we can look at that.
I thought you were going to say we should get into Final Fantasy XIV, which, yes, we should. However... unless you abandon your family and we quit our jobs, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm having a hard enough time getting into Like a Dragon 8. I have 14 hours on it now. WP says, Dungeon Encounters is an RPG stripped down to its basics. Cal-El says, Dungeon Encounters is amazing.
I'm so glad the RealNet has played Dungeon Encounters, because I saw that name and then just spun the propeller on my hat.
I don't know what the context is, but Cosmo says, Wario Tactics game. I would love a Wario Tactics game.
Probably when you mentioned Wario's Woods.
Oh, yeah. The only reason that was in my brain because Jeff Gersman is doing streams right now where he is ranking every NES game. So he plays each one for half an hour, 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And he played Wario's Woods the other day and mentioned that it came out in 94.
Yeah, that was in 94 NES.
He was flabbergasted.
I think it was the last. My cousin would always get the Nintendo games that had Nintendo characters on it, but it were puzzled. She got Yoshi's Cookie.
Yeah.
That was also, I think, a falling block puzzle game or something. And I was like, we just play Skate or Die, please.
Talking about the working editions and what Matsuno said. LMAO, that feeling when corporate culture is so bad it reminds you of fucking European feudalism.
Who said that?
John Doe, excuse me. Regarding Matsuno answering the phones, 7-8 says, this experience is similar to opening a Discord for your fans to yell at you. It's true.
It happens.
TC says, LOL, I did not expect Umberto Echo bonus content. Well, you never know. I have Airwolf says, I love how Final Fantasy Tactics starts as a double triple frame story. You got the scholar telling you about a book that has been found, and then in that book, Ramza is remembering what happened before the prologue battle.
Yeah, we haven't gotten to the actual game yet, but the framing device was throwing me for a loop.
It's very confusing. I remember not understanding that narrative device the first time I played through and getting very confused on why Delita was running away and then why he was standing next to me in the next scene.
Yeah, I mean, at least Chrono Cross put that book thing in the opening CG movie.
Yeah. John Doe says, if you die in the prologue, the game should just jump back to Ramza or the historians have him go, LOL, just fucking with you, or wait, that's not right. And then restart you at the beginning of the battle. Like the sands of time, says Eric Van 7-8 says, magazines are the Old Testament, game facts is the New Testament. Amen.
Fuck. That's a top 10 comment of all time.
But Salad says, the portrait of baby Prince Ornus is adorable and strangely dignified. John Doe says, welcome back to the stage of history.
The legend will never die.
Jesse says, I was talking about this earlier, but I rented a PlayStation game called Floating Runner that made me physically ill.
Floating Runner?
Yeah. Strange.
That sounds European. I don't...
Yeah. John Doe says, fuck yes, I love rental copies with existing files. One thing that happened with me is when I rented Earthbound, I named Ness P-Ness.
Nice.
And my mom got mad at me because it was a rental copy, and
Well, at least you didn't get a copy of Zelda that just had racial slurs for the Link name.
Yeah, that's... Jesse says Chris's dad might have ruined Amoeba's day.
Yeah, right. Amoeba was going to go rent it the next weekend to finish that character off, and it's literally gone from the store.
That happened with me with Earthbound. My save was gone. My penis was gone.
Have you confirmed that your dad bought it? Or if he was like, look, let's say I rent this and lose it. What's the fee for that? And then he paid that.
Actually, I don't know. I'm going to have to ask him. Should we interview my dad?
You should interview your dad.
All right. Let's call my dad on the podcast next week.
If your dad's like my dad, because we both have dads who are dads, he'd be like, I did what? Do you think your dad remembers this singular event?
My dad remembers strange singular events. Like, he remembers that he got the mail order Autobot Jazz.
Fuck, nice.
The one that, I guess it was metal or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
He always talks about that.
Well done.
So
Dad went above and beyond.
Yeah. And
my mom got the mail order reflector.
I remember him also acquiring back issues of Nintendo Power so we could figure out how to beat Zelda 2.
Smart.
So
did that work? Did you beat Zelda 2?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, we did it. Thanks, RealNet, for joining us tonight. We'll see you on the next episode of Retrograde Amnesia. This episode was a production of Retrograde Amnesia, recorded on March 5th, 2024. Thank you, Mark
Shepard,
for the introductory music. And
You're welcome, Chris.
thank you, WorldSyn, for the podcast artwork. You can find us in places. Podcast at retrogradeamnesia.com. We're on Twitter, we're on Blue Sky, we're on YouTube. If you have a comment about any of our episodes, I think the best place to leave a comment is to go to find the episode on YouTube and type in a comment there. You got a Google account, right? Just do that. Or you can go to patreon.com/retroam and get the bonus episodes, early access, ad-free episodes, all kinds of fun stuff. Also, you can be part of the RealNet. It's nice. It's fun. It's cozy. Until next time, Eric.
Yes, we will blame God.
And now you may go back to sleep. So I have to figure out who suggested that, but somebody
That's
did.
pretty good.
Yeah. Ivalice Princess Ovelia was abducted. What? Was abducted. Oh, period. Yeah, I have two specific memories of that. Like I remember the American Gladiators Super Nintendo game being dog shit, and it only lasted me like couple of hours before I was fucking done with it. And then I also remember being extremely disappointed in the Samurai Showdown port for Super Nintendo.
Oh god, yeah.
Because I was like expecting to see what I saw in the Neo Geo in the arcade, and it wasn't there.
Not even
close. I was so fucking disappointed. Anyway,
it leaked. It was a list of names that were banned for your Dark Souls 2 character.
I do have I have vague memories of that.
I was thinking about that today at work, and I remembered two of them, and they both made me laugh.
Yeah.
Nut in Mouth.
Nut in Mouth.
And Nutty Mouth.
Nutty Mouth.
You couldn't call your character Nutty Mouth in Dark Souls 2. I thought that was very funny today at about 1 p.m.
That's incredible.
Like, it instantly made me want to call my character Nutty Mouth.
I also have a sound drop on here that's just a track from the game that's called Unhappiness. And so whenever I'm really unhappy, I'm going to press it.
Throughout the day, or was it part of like the podcast?
Throughout the whole day.
Okay.
The whole time I'm down here, I just press it when I'm unhappy.
That's good.
So would you like to go ahead and get started? Would you like to hear the ceremoniously? There's a visual here. What was the character or the character designer's name? I forgot his name. We talked about him before, but he talked about how he had no I keep wanting to say history. Experience with sword and sorcery.
I don't know
if
the Tactics Ogre Battle guy was also the Final Fantasy Tactics character designer.
Oh, okay. So then cut that. Fuck it. Anyway, the visual.
Busted.
Playtime's over!